What's up, Locked On Cardinals fans as well as Locked On Rockies fans? It's a little bit of a crossover today. Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies joins me. I'm Lucas Smith of Locked On Cardinals. Paul, how you doing on this fine day?
I'm doing good. One day closer to opening day. It's gonna be an exciting year of baseball.
Absolutely. Do the Rockies open on April 7th, or do they open a day later?
I believe they're the 8th. I believe they
8th.
open up April 8th against the Dodgers. I believe that is the first matchup. Classic, but it's at Coors Field, which is cool. I think the Rockies they've started opening up at home, it seems a little bit more lately, which was cool because growing up, I almost always remember the Rockies starting on the road.
Yeah, I remember for the last couple of years, the Cardinals always opening up on the road as well. But it's so bizarre because you think of Busch Stadium, or at least I think of Busch Stadium, and you think of the pageantry on opening day. You know, one of the best opening days in baseball. You've got the Clydesdales, the Red Jackets, and everything of that nature. And yet they always open up the season on the road. So maybe the season being delayed by a couple weeks, it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise for the St. Louis Cardinals and the fact that they get to open up at home. But this offseason was tumultuous for a number of reasons for a number of different teams. The Rockies are no stranger to that. They lost a franchise shortstop, which we'll get into. They gained a franchise third baseman, it seems, which we'll get
Left
into.
fielder.
That's a good point. Left fielder. Bud Black did say he would be a left fielder. So I guess I'll just start kind of general. Your take on the lockout situation, how that ended, and what the Rockies have done since then.
I think the funniest thing from the lockout is that all the stuff that happens with the Rockies this past couple of years, and there's a labor disagreement between players, and who do they send out to go head up negotiations? None other than Dick Monfort. I wish you know what the negotiation should have been? Send Dick and send Nolan and just have them figure it out.
There you
That would
go.
have been really fun. That could have been hilarious. At the end of the day, I'm glad the lockout ended, but here's the deal. I hope folks take away the fact that the owners control way more of the narrative than you think. Oh, we're gonna cancel all these games. We're gonna do all this. Oh, turns out we don't have to do that, huh? Interesting. Kind of weird because you were really stern about that whole thing. That's my kind of big takeaway. I'm glad baseball's back. I'm glad that I'm very pro player, honestly.
Mhm.
I know I don't have as good a deep a knowledge as others to go into, but that's the kind of my quick takeaways. And as for the Rockies specific, honestly, losing Trevor Story and John Gray's tough. It's at least something we kind of prepped ourselves for, but at least the Rockies didn't lose Trevor Story and John Gray and then do nothing. This is probably the most active offseason the Rockies have had in what feels like forever, honestly. I mean, this is the most easily the most money that's been spent in an offseason for a while. Is it all, for moves that people that immediately makes the Rockies contenders and going to take down the Dodgers? No, but I certainly don't think the Rockies are in as bad of a spot as people think. And honestly, they've made moves that make sense. It's just there's still things and there's still a lot of what ifs to figure out, but you can't sit here as a Rocky. You can be disappointed as a Rockies fan still, and I think that's completely understandable. But you know, you kind of just get to that point where, and this is going to be a bad pun, but the story is closed on that team. No one is that competitive team that was one game away from winning the NL West and took down the Cubs. Unfortunately, that era of Rockies baseball is over. It's done. Charlie Blackmon is really the only one left from that team. Ryan McMahon was on the roster, but still was getting his first shakes of things. But now the Rockies are saying, here is the Kris Bryant led era with these other veterans that are going to, fill in the spots and perform and fill some time until hopefully this next wave of because the Rockies do have some really interesting prospects that are still 3 to 4 years out, but that will probably be what the Rockies are hoping for, and they'll be more competitive than people think. I'm pro Kris Bryant move, especially when you feel a little bit better about it, knowing that the Rockies reached out to Trevor Story after the Bryant. I think that's how the timeline went. I'm not completely sure, but the Rockies did reach out to Trevor Story again, offering more money than the Red Sox, and Trevor Story just decided to move on. You feel better about that, knowing that the Rockies at least were willing to pony up that money, and you knew the relationship was over, but I appreciate that fact. I'm honestly most concerned about losing John Gray. I think that's really going
Really?
to be a bigger impact on this team than losing Trevor Story. I know that sounds crazy to say, but I really think that that's going to be an issue for the Rockies this season.
Yeah, that is an interesting take. Definitely not one that I expected in terms of the John Gray and the Cardinals offseason. They were definitely the busiest pre lockout. They signed the Steven Matz to the 4-year deal. They re-signed TJ McFarland. They re-signed Yadier Molina. Re-signed Adam Wainwright. Swan song for these guys as they begin to embark on their last year together, or at least so they say. You never know what those two if they end up
I feel like it's
producing
been the
for one more
swan
year.
song for so many of these Cardinals players for like 5 years.
Right. Yeah. The old era, the new era, kind of mesh together as these veterans kind of find their way out of baseball and into their next chapter of their lives, which for Adam Wainwright could very well be broadcasting. Just a little sidebar there. But then the lockout, yeah, it was just tumultuous. You had the 40 something days of no negotiations, and then you had the two 15+ hour negotiations. Back to back weeks that resulted in little to no movement, and then all of a sudden, it seemed like to me, anyways, after those 2 weeks of negotiations in Florida, and then again, I believe in New York or Pittsburgh somewhere. Then all of a sudden, it just felt like there was a deal. Oh, we got it. We're done. We agreed
Yeah.
on the international draft, and here we go. So it was one of those things that kind of sprang together rather quickly in my mind, from the sense of, after those 2 long negotiation sessions, you didn't feel like there was a sense of a deal. And then all of a sudden there was. And then post lockout, the Cardinals actually made the first move post lockout as they signed a Drew Verhagen. Big
Right.
time name, big time
Right.
splash. I know. I'm glad you were sitting down for that news. But nevertheless, they've been somewhat busy in adding depth pieces. They didn't go out and get a Kris Bryant. They obviously didn't go out and get Trevor Story. They got Drew Verhagen, Nick Whitgren, Zach McAllister with a minor league or major league invite, Corey Dickerson, former Marlin and Ray, I believe Pirate as well, but definitely Marlin and Ray, making these little moves that could likely make the team better. And the spring training so far has been pretty positive for St. Louis, at least at the time of this recording. They've had some success. You saw some good things from Verhagen, from Whitgren. You've seen some good things from your old friend Nolan Arenado, who I think the Rockets are probably still paying somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're paying, I believe, this year and next year, they're still paying money for.
Yeah, so that's got to feel good as a Rockies fan. But nonetheless, I really thought the Cardinals were going to make a splash move, and who knows? By the time this is released, maybe they have been making a splash move. I thought they'd go get a Story. I still think that they could go get a Sean Manaea, a Frankie Montas, a starter, because with the injuries they have in their rotation as well as in the bullpen, the depth moves of Whitgren and of Verhagen have proven to be pretty good. But you're still, feeling a little weak in the starting rotation. You mentioned losing John Gray, and now that hurts a little bit more. What's the rotation look like for the Rockies this year then?
So it's, the Rockies still have some strong arms. It's just John Gray really was a nice piece right in the middle there. That's, he's going to take the mound in the middle of a series and you're going to have confidence in. But you're going to feel good going Marquez, Senzatella, Gomber, Freeland. But then after that, it's kind of, do you turn to young guys? They just went out and got Cool there, I think is his name,
Yep.
from Pittsburgh, who's going to probably, I would imagine is going to be going for that spot. The Rockies went with that veteran fifth arm in the rotation last year with Chichi Gonzalez, and it just didn't work. John Gray was just good enough and good at Coors Field, where I felt very confident in that 5-man rotation when healthy. Where it's just, I think every Rockies pitcher is giving you a chance to win. Got to see a full season from Gomber again. You mentioned the trade again. He didn't finish. He had some games where he walked a ton of people and then he got hurt, but he also had some games where his stuff was lights out electric, where he really had great movement on all his pitches. So hopefully, we got to get a full season from Austin Gomber this year, as the Rockies really, I think, are going to lean on him. This is a year for him to really step up and fill in. I know one pitcher can't be two pitchers, but it's just maintaining that the Rockies are going to be strong with those 4 guys, and that, Kyle Freeland's also in that same conversation as Austin Gomber, that when you get to that 5th arm, whether it be a couple of your young guys, your Ryan Rollisons, your Peter Lamberts, or Cole, if you're going to go that way, if they struggle or if they're not as good, you're still putting yourself in a position to get better. It's just, losing John Gray, just with the way the Rockies were operating, with bringing back pieces that they liked, there's Senzatella and Crone, in 2019, bringing back Elias Diaz and Herman Marquez, giving them extensions. It just seemed kind of like, why the mix up with John Gray? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
And it just turns out he didn't. Texas offered more money, and it's just, I don't know how Colorado can't match that exact deal that Texas did. Because I think if they do, Jon Gray is still a Rocky. But and I'm not, and people might be kind of shocked that I'm holding Jon Gray in such high regard. It's just Jon Gray's just a solid pitcher that's good in Colorado, and just it was a player you didn't need to you weren't really thinking you were gonna lose. Because again, why was if Jon Gray, if you're not gonna match this offer for the Rangers, why are you not moving Jon Gray at the deadline? How many teams, and I'm just, and St. Louis, I believe, was on that list, would have happily traded for a Jon Gray, and St. Louis especially, I'm sure, would have traded for the Story Jon Gray combo deal. So at the end of the day, what you're getting back for losing Jon Gray and Trevor Story is just the one draft pick, and I just think that's not enough. And it's just a thing. I think that'll be a bigger thorn in the side. It's not as easy to replace a solid starting pitcher. Again, not a Cy Young, not an all-star, but just someone that when he takes the bump, you're confident in. When his stuff is on, he's going to be a solid 3, 4, 5 arm in your rotation. That's just gonna that knows how to pitch at altitude. So we'll see about Cole and the replacements and the young guys, but the production from Trevor Story, why I say Jon Gray's a bigger deal, is you're hoping Kris Bryant fills the offensive production of Trevor Story. That is hopefully your goal. And then you just need Jose Iglesias to not be the worst offensive shortstop in baseball this season, and and get better there, and just not be a liability on defense while you're basically filling time for Tovar in coming up here in the system. So it's just a matter of, there's you got your Bryant to fill that. You got a veteran shortstop that hopefully in a place that has had a long history of great infield defense. So hopefully he comes to Colorado and learns from the people around him, gets a good relationship with Brendan Rodgers up the gut, because they had some issues, but it was the first spring training game they played together, and they buffed Kyle Freeland was going up against the starting Angels and got a tailor-made double play ball right to Jose Iglesias, who just didn't bad feed to Brendan Rodgers, or vice versa. I can't remember. So clearly the communication needs to be worked on there, but they've never played together. So that production from Trevor Story is going to get replicated through multiple players. Getting Jon Gray, you're just hoping another pitcher can be Jon Gray when you could have gotten Jon Gray for not a bad price.
Yeah, and you even mentioned the fact that you have somebody that can pitch at altitude. It's not just the fact that he's a good pitcher, but he's pitched there for years and he knows how to pitch there. So that is a big loss. We talked about Story a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about it, because this is somebody that we talked about in the offseason. Is Story a good fit in St. Louis? I think that was one of my most popular episodes of the offseason, both on YouTube and otherwise. So, on my side of things, and at the end of the day, he goes to Boston. I think he's going to play second base there, or Bogart's going to shift over to second, one of the two. And it's going to be one of the best infields in all of baseball. I'll tell you that right now. If he comes to St. Louis, is it the best infield in all of baseball? Probably not as big as Boston or somewhere else, or especially Los Angeles. But Los Angeles has the best anything in all of baseball, to be honest with you.
Woo!
But nevertheless, Story does go to Boston, and I think once the Cardinal fans, or Cardinal Twitter, anyways, once they saw the price tag on Trevor Story, they were like, all right, that's fine. You go be in Boston. We don't. The Cardinals were never going to pay that much. I'm not saying Story got overpaid. There's an argument to that. I'm not saying that, but there is a clear argument to say the Cardinals did the right thing in not paying him that contract from the Cardinals' perspective. And the reason I say that is because they have money tied up elsewhere. They've said for a long time that Paul DeJong is going to be their starting shortstop. The reason I took that with a grain of salt is because they also said that about Matt Carpenter about 3 days before the Nolan Arenado trade. So, nevertheless, I do think that it's a bit of a miss from the Cardinals' standpoint, but not so much of a miss as to say, okay, this season's over, that the offense is going to struggle, et cetera, et cetera. I think Paul DeJong has looked good this spring, hitting the ball hard. You have an average replacement in Edmundo Sosa. If needed, you can move Tommy Edman over to short and call up your top prospect in Nolan Gorman, or one of your top prospects. He's not the top prospect. So you have options outside of Trevor Story. I think what it came down to, besides the money, for just lineup fit, the Cardinals did not need another right-handed bat. The only right-handed bat I see them signing is Albert Pujols, and that is only in a platoon DH situation. But Albert's also been linked to Colorado, as I think Seattle as well too. So that's the only scenario, in my opinion, where the Cardinals do acquire a right-handed bat at the major league level. But Trevor Story going to Boston seems like he got paid there. I know that there were some vaccination issues at the start of it or something like that. We don't want to get into that. Just that was a
Well, it's
thing.
just the interesting thing to note is that we were told last year the Rockies were 100% vaccinated. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
So that's the wrinkle in there. That story. Yeah. I'm gonna let the beat reporters and all of them handle that, and we'll talk about it as it goes on. But the wrinkle in that is the fact that we were told that the Rockies were one of the first teams to be 100% vaccinated, I believe, as well.
Always something to report on, it seems like. But nevertheless, Trevor Story, I think he's going to do well in Boston. Seeing him with that monster is going to be fun. I think from your perspective, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's a good thing he's not only out of the division, but out of the league. So you don't have to see him every day. Maybe that's painful for you. I don't know. What were your thoughts on the Story to Boston situation?
My entire family's from Boston, so I will never.
Oh,
So I will not be escaping
no
any Trevor
escape, Paul.
Story
No.
in Boston stuff. It sucks at the end of the day.
Right.
I really liked that Rockies team. It was my favorite Rockies team. I grew up and I was really young with the Blake Street Bombers and stuff. And 2007 was a really cool ragtag team, but that team was the first time in my life that I said this Rockies team can go up against anyone and take them down in a 7-game series. Like if you give them a 7-game series, this Rockies team, if they perform at the level that they can beat the best. But now I honestly got to say, like, I'm happy he's going to a place where I think he's going to thrive. I never thought changing positions was a good idea for him. However, second base makes the most sense. Go for that. Let him rest that arm a little bit more. He's going to be electric on defense. He's going to be really, really good there because I think he's been underrated as a defender. And I'm sure Nolan really was pushing for it as hard as he could. But if the Cardinals weren't willing to pay that money, Trevor Story wanted to get paid above all because
Right.
I think he believes he's been slept on a little bit. And I think he really does. I think part of the reason why he wants to leave Colorado is because there's so much of Colorado embrace. He was either going to fully embrace it, him and Nolan, they're going to take it all down, and they were going to be the Rockies guys. And then when it didn't, now he gets to go and show a major market what he can do. And I mean, I can't say that I don't think he's going to mash in the AL East. I think he's going to be. I think the Red Sox made a great move. I think Trevor Story is going to be a great impact on the team. I'm even in the same. You can say this about the Kris Bryant deal. Sometimes when you get 5+ year deals, it makes me a little hesitant on some stuff just when it gets to age. But
Mm-hmm.
that Trevor Story's a special player, man. I really, really, I mean, and same with Nolan Arenado and like why he deserves his contract when he got it, and just like these other special players. I think that he took a lot of time. I mean, I was quite surprised how long it took Trevor Story to sign this
Yeah.
offseason. I was kind of, especially pre-lockout and with everything, I was like, is the market cold on Trevor I just couldn't believe this. Like, I really couldn't believe that people were going to sit there and be that worried about a guy that just had one sort of a down year and caught up in the Coors Field effect when the dude's
Mm-hmm.
hit 500-foot home runs and has, was the Rockies lead, even in a down year, was the Rockies leader in WAR last year.
Yeah.
It was still the Rockies' best player in a team that actually that outperformed expectations last year and being injured in the process. So, it sucks, but I gotta say, I am very happy he's not in St. Louis, and I'm very happy he's not in San Francisco. If it was in the division, that would have been way worse. And honestly, St. Louis, it would have been if they ever won a World Series ring. I hope Bridich gets one. That they'll send him one if St. Louis, if Trevor Story went to St. Louis and him and Nolan won a ring there. I hope Bridich would get a ring from them as well, and that would just burn me deep. But now I just get to deal with my relatives being like, "Oh, hey, the Story guy's pretty good." It's like, yeah, yeah, I know.
Oh, I've seen him play once or twice. Yeah. Let's talk about Kris Bryant real quick, as well as Ryan McMahon. We'll finish up talking about a former Cardinal. And I believe you also have a joke. Did you want to share that now, or do you want to share that later?
That was my joke. Was Bridich getting the ring? That was
Bryant's
the
getting the
one.
ring.
That
That's
was,
good.
yeah.
That's good. I
I
like
mean,
that.
because I mean that was literally that. I honestly would say Trevor Story going to St. Louis would have been worse. I just because it's like watching those two share a team that isn't my team.
Right.
After watching them share the team for so long, like that would be worse. Honestly worse than San Francisco, but the worst would have been somehow ending up on the Dodgers. And
Oh gosh, I don't know if the Dodgers can pay anybody more, but they
oh,
can.
they'll
So
find sometimes they'll find more money.
the surprise move of the offseason, in my opinion, before the Carlos Correa signing to the Twins,
Yeah.
was Kris Bryant to the Rockies, because with letting Trevor Story walk, with letting John Gray walk, it didn't seem like the Rockies were going to try and win this year, especially when you look at the monster that is the NL West. The Diamondbacks could be sneaky competitive, and now the Rockies can too. But you've got the Giants, the Padres, and the Dodgers, all with World Series aspirations, especially the Dodgers. And I think this is one of those years where you can say World Series or bust for Los Angeles.
You have to say World Series or bust if
Right.
you're Los Angeles.
You're right. So you have all that going on in the West. You didn't, the Rockies weren't going to spend money on those two, and yet they spend what was it, $170 million on Kris Bryant, and then 70 more on McMahon. So I want to get your thoughts on Bryant first. You mentioned that you like him. You mentioned Bud Black saying he's going to play left field. Kris Bryant moving from third base never made sense to me. Just watching him play third base, in the division, he was so good there. I don't know why they felt the need to move him around at the first place in Chicago, but he is somebody that has thrived in that role. I'm not going to deny that. He plays all the other positions extremely well. What do you see, Chris? What do you see as a successful tenure for a Kris Bryant in Rocky uniform?
He's here for the contract. Let's start there. I mean, he's here for an extended period of time on that contract. I'm not saying the full 7 years. I would say if you get 5 years and you figure out a trade, if it works out down the line, that's something. But I want Kris Bryant to lead this team offensively. He doesn't need to be an all-star on defense, but I want Kris Bryant to come up to the bat, and it's for me to feel like it did when Nolan and Trevor Story did, is to come up and know that Kris Bryant is getting put the Rockies in the position to score runs. I want him to play a good left field and not be a liability on defense, and I want him to be the MVP. That's what I'm hoping for. I mean, yes, it's a confusing move for the Rockies, but as I mentioned, this was Bill Schmidt saying this is the new face of Rockies baseball. Why that, they knew that Trevor Story wasn't going to come back. They tried again, even after getting Kris Bryant, to see if he wanted to come back. But now, as I've learned, Bill Schmidt apparently didn't have as much power as I thought he did last year after being upgraded to interim GM. I kind of thought it was the Rockies just tagging the interim on there just to buy them time until the end of the season where they ripped it off and made him the GM because they were going to do their search or whatever, but they had their guy. It turns out that Dick Monfort was much more involved in baseball operations last year, including the trade deadline. So it wasn't Bill Schmidt at the deadline. It was a deadline committee that was working to figure things out. So I think that impacts those deals, why all that stuff wasn't getting done, et cetera, et cetera. So this is Bill Schmidt going out and saying, this is the guy that is going to lead the Colorado Rockies to the future. And he is an MVP. He's a World Series champion. He hits the ball hard. He is going to bring offensive pop to this lineup. The Rockies clearly don't, they don't ever want to embrace the rebuild thing because they wouldn't sign a Kris Bryant. You wouldn't spend that money. You would embrace this low performing offense, and this team without Kris Bryant would have been one of the worst offenses in baseball, potentially. I mean, even playing at Coors Field, they would be, and because we've already seen that. But now and then extending Ryan McMahon, at least being very active in the free agent market, bringing in multiple free agents. The Rockies haven't seen multiple major league free agent signings. I can't even remember, like I said. So this is just is it going to pan out? Are the Rockies competing with the Dodgers this year? No. If everything goes well and with the extended playoffs and the way the Rockies played against the Padres last year, and Tatis being out to start the season, and the Rockies really being good against a bunch of other divisions in baseball, including the one where the World Series, the Rockies crushed the NL East last year, and except for the Marlins. One reason the Rockies always struggle against the Marlins. It's so weird. But, and I talked to Sully about this on Locked On MLB. The Rockies could make their way to a wild card, the second wild card, or the third the seventh wild card, whatever wild card we're on. Could the Rockies end up there this year? Yes, they could. Do I think that's the most likely situation? No. I have the Rockies in the 73 to 75 to 70, that kind of mid 70s win range. And that's fine. then that's it, because that's better than they were before signing Kris Bryant. Because before Kris Bryant, our friends at BetOnline set the Rockies win total line at 68.5.
Yeah.
Might have been more tempted to take the under there. However,
Right.
now I think it's a slam dunk, take the over. I think the Rockies are much better than a 68.5 win team, especially when you have team. I know the Rockies have this tough division, but the Rockies play really well outside their division, and the Rockies were the reason the Padres didn't make the playoffs last year. The Padres had multiple opportunities to pull ahead in the division and played a lot of meaningful games against Colorado in the second half of the season last year, and the Rockies dominated the Padres. It was a big reason why they did not make it into October. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I don't want everyone sitting here making me think that I'm saying the Rockies are World Series contenders or anything right now. I'm just saying that they're a lot better than people think,
Right.
and the Kris Bryant move is shocking, but it's to signal this is the next era. Ryan McMahon is a Gold Glove caliber shortstop who has shown really great flashes of offense. If he can get offensive consistency, him and Kris Bryant are going to be a really good pair. And I think Brendan Rodgers on the way up as well, if he develops the way we're hoping, mixed with continued solid performances from CJ Cron and Elias Diaz, this team is knocking the crud off the Diamondbacks. I was talking to Millard. I don't want to hear that the Diamondbacks were terrible last year. Worse than the Rockies. There was few teams worse than the Rockies, especially on the road last year, and the Diamondbacks were one of them. And the Diamondbacks have made very few moves. The Rockies have actually been aggressive, and yes, they're losing Trevor Story, but Kris Bryant was one of the top free agents this offseason. Any
Yeah.
team that could have gotten Kris Bryant. I mean, he chose to go to the Rockies. I don't buy into him and Dick Monfort's whole press conference of the winning thing, and we're gonna, that there was it was just a lot of classic big signing type stuff. Yeah, I
Right.
hope we can bring the championship. We're gonna do this. And it's like, we'll get there. But the Kris Bryant makes the Rockies better, and I can't sit here and say I don't like that. It's a lot of money, but you got to pay those big players a lot of
Yeah.
money. And again, I am at least encouraged by the fact that the Rockies went back to Trevor Story and did one last pitch. It was long gone, but hey, they at least went out there and said, hey, the door's still open. We understand, and that makes me feel a little bit better about losing Trevor Story. I'm just more mad that they didn't trade him.
Yeah.
That's
They get any prospects for him.
yeah. I mean, now it's one prospect versus you could have gotten three prospects for Gray and Story. And that's just better. That's a better deal. And now it's just I'm excited. I really think it's it makes me more excited for Rockies baseball. The fact that they signed Kris Bryant. Is it going to pan out? Does it immediately make Rockies contenders? No, but it makes me a lot more excited for the Rockies, and I'm glad that the Rockies do have a bona fide superstar still. They have Charlie Blackmon, but I mean, they're going to keep playing him in right field to start the season, which I don't know why. I thought the DH was going to be a blessing, but maybe I think we'll see Blackmon slip down there later. It's just, so yeah, it confuses a lot of people, confused me at first, but it was, I think once I really sat down and it was just the ultimate decision of, hey, Ryan McMahon and Kris Bryant are going to be the next pair that, they might not be sharing the infield or whatever, but this mixed with that pitching staff we really, really love, that starting rotation, that is going to be what we're going to do as Rockies. And then, they're making moves to say our other bats are going to be people that are going to hit in the air, trading Raimel Tapia for someone that's, basically just hits the ball in the air and hits home runs. I mean, I don't know, in an already crowded outfield. So they clearly are doing something differently this year. And I think the moves the Rockies have made, and a lot of, you'll see around Rockies Twitter as well. Like a lot of people are satisfied with this Rockies offseason. The sting of Gray and Story is still there, but it is negated by an active offseason with actual signings that make sense.
Yeah, you mentioned the move that I kind of want to end up with. We're running a little bit short on time, but the Rockies did acquire former Cardinal Randal Grichuk, and like you mentioned, already crowded outfield. The DH probably helps with that. For Raimel Tapia, I'm excited to see Grichuk in Coors Field. So real quick, your thoughts on Grichuk?
I'm honestly, I was hoping you could tell me. I know very little. I know a lot of, Tapia, fan favorite, just at 60. I like Raimel Tapia, and I think him going to Toronto is actually a great move for him in a career. I think that is going to be a place that they can work with that swing.
Oh, they're going to be so good too.
And get him. Now he can go and basically, I mean, not only I'm sure the hitting coaches, but that lineup as well. So I don't know. You're just quick thoughts, because I think Toronto is getting a speedy, fun player that's a fourth outfielder. I mean, that's really what Tapia is, but he is a ton of fun to play, and every time he's on the field, it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, Grichuk is somebody for the Cardinals that just never really panned out. He was never able to find that consistency, but boy, oh boy, does he have power. He may not look like it like a Tyler O'Neill does, who's just absolutely jacked and things of that nature, but Grichuk has just tremendous bat speed. And when he gets the barrel to the ball, it goes a long way and it gets there very fast. And he's always been a good defender as well. Remember, there was one game against Houston a couple years ago that he robbed 2 home runs and hit one himself. So he's very close to a 5-tool player when he's at his best, like very best. But I think day to day, you're going to see some bombs and you're going to see some speed on the bases as well. I really like that move from a Rockies perspective. I didn't get it from a Blue Jays perspective just because you have a stacked lineup and a really good team. Why trade away Randal Grichuk? But like you said, they're getting Tapia, who's an exciting player. But I think Grichuk is going to thrive in Colorado. I know that it's an old adage. You guys might get tired of hearing it, but that Mile High City and the altitude is going to increase his power, and I think it's going to be a great fit there in Colorado, and I'm excited to see him as well. And I like the Rockies uniforms too, so I think anybody looks good in a Rocky uniform. So
Those all
Paul,
purple, man, they look great.
Gotta love the purple. So Paul, this has been a lot of fun. You can see your Twitter handle right down there if you're watching on YouTube. Tell my listeners where else they can find your work and where they can find Locked On Rockies.
We are at Paul Holden 33. You can find a ton of my stuff at paulfholden.com. You can also find us on Twitter at LO Rockies. And we just hit the 100 subscriber mark on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. So shout out to all the Rockies fans. But all you Nolan Arenado fans that want to come over and stay up to date with his former team. And now we can have the Bryant Arenado debate, except they're not going to play the same field.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But
what about for my fans, Lucas? What about for you?
Absolutely. My Twitter right down there on YouTube at LJ Fastball. You can follow the show on Twitter or Instagram at LO_Cardinals and Locked On Cardinals on YouTube as well, and wherever you get your podcast. Paul, this is always a pleasure talking to you once again. Appreciate it. And until we talk to you guys the next time here on the Locked On Podcast Network, be sure to stay safe, stay well, and have a fantastic rest of your day.